So let's get started. Thank you everyone for joining. Hi Jenny, nice to see you. I can't see you yet. So I will just open up my share screen so you can see my slides and we can do things at the same time. Why have I got two of them? Let's see how it goes. And then start at the beginning, shall we? I am so excited about this. This is my little baby project that I've been working on for the last couple months, and now it's ready. Okay, can everybody see that? Okay, closing the chat. Perfect. So this is my little project. Let's get started. So this is a presentation by me, Kirsten Swales, on SIBO Slim. So, big welcome to all of you. I like to just start off with some housekeeping stuff. So if you want to make sure that you've got a pen and paper so you can take down notes, because there's going to be, it's not jam-packed with too much information because I'm keeping it simple. Otherwise it gets, if you tell me to do 10,000 things, then I'll end up doing none of the things and then I want to have a nap. So what's that? Why is that there in chat? Hi, just one from Ms. Okay. All right, so now I'm hoping I can turn off. I'm just going to turn off the chat and then I'll turn it back on at the end when we come to the questions and answers. Okay, so we have a pen and paper, and then as we go through, if you just write down and maybe star something that you want to ask me about at the end so that you don't forget. The whole presentation is going to be 1 hour, and then I'll leave some time for Q&A at the end. If there's a gazillion questions, I'll just get to them after. This is being recorded, so I will send it out to you as well after that. If you want to make sure that the other tabs are closed so that you can just concentrate on me. If you need a bathroom break, now would be a good time to do it. And let's go from there. So in the next hour, this is what we'll be going through. Because I want this to be informative so not everybody needs to lose weight. So some people gain weight with SIBO, some people lose weight with SIBO. I was the one that gained weight with SIBO. So I want this to be useful to people that aren't going to do the SIBO Slim program anyway. So we're going to learn what is SIBO. We're going to learn how to test for SIBO, treatment options for SIBO, which diet is best for, there's lots of different ones, so we'll go through that. And then we're also going to go through gut restoration and the microbiome. What is SIBO Slim, my little baby? And then we're going to go through SIBO Slim and weight loss, and then how SIBO Slim actually keeps the weight off. So I'd like to start with who am I? So my name is Kirsten and I am originally from South Africa. I now live in Bali, Indonesia. I've done quite a lot of traveling all around the world. So I've lived in South Africa, I've lived in the United Kingdom, I lived in Austria for a little while, and Australia for about 10 years, so they kind of stole my accent. But I've made Bali home and I'm very, very happy here. So I've been here for the last 3 years. I work completely online as a naturopath, a medical herbalist, and a nutritionist. And then just some personal stuff. I love to surf. I love my yoga. I am a new doggy mum. I've got a golden retriever named Buddha, and I absolutely love him to death. And actually, I've also got a kitten, a rescued cat I've called him Thor because he's totally the boss. Okay, so why I do what I do. So I think the universe kind of helped me out with my calling. I don't remember a time that digestion, well, before I fixed it, I don't remember a time that digestion was easy for me. And then I probably even popped out of the womb with digestive issues. So my mum used to say that I was a very colicky baby, and colic is when the baby just cries and cries and cries and cries. So I used to do that a lot. So I probably wasn't digesting my food even as an infant. And then probably from around the age of about 10, 11, 12, I became very aware that things weren't as simple as they should be. So I did all the right things. I ate really well. I exercised. I was quite an optimistic child, but weight was always a struggle. And I would see people eating these meals and not getting fat, and I just couldn't understand it. And I have since I've learned about SIBO, that I wasn't actually fat. I was bloated. So there's a little bit of a difference. So bloating is when your tummy sort of puffs out and you can see it or you can feel it. And whereas fat is you're gaining weight. But I could fluctuate so much overnight. There was my aha moment, and I'll show you a photo of it later, was when I gained like 5 kilos in one weekend that a friend came to visit. And then I did a fast the next day and I just dropped 4 kilos overnight. So that's not weight, that was inflammation. Then about 4 years ago, I discovered this weight loss protocol, which is now a combination of my SIBO Slim, and I felt absolutely amazing. And then hindsight, now that I know what I know about SIBO, the foods that I was eating for that protocol were all very low FODMAP. So FODMAPs are the low fermentable carbohydrates, and they can help to reduce bloating. So I felt really, really, really good until maybe like 2 years later, and I kept all this weight off. I lost like 16 kilos. Then the bloating started coming back, and I hadn't changed what I was eating. I was still fit, I was still healthy, I had a little six-pack, but I was getting this bloating. I was like, I just can't understand it. So I started restricting because I still wanted to look good and I didn't want to get bloated because it was really sore as well. So I got down to the stage where I was just eating chicken and eggs. And so that really messed around with my nutrients and it messed around with my microbiome. That's when I found out that I had SIBO. And then I actually got rid of SIBO quite quickly. So I got rid of SIBO within 3 months with a combination of herbal antimicrobials and some fasting and elemental diet. But then, because I'd been so restricted for so long, now that I could finally eat again, I just went a little bit crazy with the food. So, and then I got a big stress thing, and I tried to go to South Africa, and everything was just so much that I got into a binge restrict cycle, and I gained like 25 kilos, which is a lot. So then I did the emotional work, and a big chunk of it came off, and I've lost a lot of the self-hatred that I had from there. But the weight was just going up and down, up and down, up and down. So I knew this weight loss protocol worked for me a few years ago. And then I've used my weight loss knowledge with my SIBO knowledge, and I've put them together, and I tested it out on myself, and I'm down like 11 kilos. And so I feel so much better in my body. So it makes me really, 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 really excited to share it. It's amazing. Cool. Okay, so let's start with what is SIBO. So SIBO is an acronym, and it stands for Small Intestinal Bacterial Overgrowth. So your small intestine is actually really, really long. It's 22 feet. And if you imagine someone where they might have a six-pack, that's the area of your small intestine. This is where the majority of our digestion happens. So we break down our proteins in our stomach, and then we break down and digest and absorb our fats and our carbohydrates in our small intestine. It should be relatively sterile in terms of bacteria. So we start to have issues when this bacteria come up into the small intestine. There's a little thing between your belly button and your right hip where the small intestine meets the large intestine. So there's this little thing called the ileocecal valve. So this should be letting things through, but then keeping things out. Sometimes there can be an issue with that, and the bacteria manage to get up into your small intestine. And then, so it doesn't necessarily mean that it's bad bacteria. It could be an overgrowth of your good bacteria. But if they get in there, then they kind of get first dibs on your food. And they can create a little bit of a mess, and they can cause a little bit of inflammation. So if these bacteria are getting your food, you could have the best diet in the whole wide world. But if the bacteria are eating your nutrients, then you can end up malnourished. Super annoying. So that's SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. They should be hanging out in the large intestine, not the small intestine. Okay, so what are the most common symptoms of SIBO? This was my aha weekend. So this is kind of quite slim, just before I got SIBO. So it doesn't look that bad, but if you've had bloating yourself, you'll know how that feels. It was so uncomfortable. So on the inside, it just feels like things are pushing out, and it affects your breathing because it's pushing your diaphragm up. It was just really, really, really uncomfortable. So the picture on the left was in the evening, and then the picture on the right was the next morning. So that was like down, that was 4 kilos difference. So I was just holding onto that much water because my body was that inflamed that it looked like that. was really, really sore. That's bloating. I wasn't pushing out my stomach. And if someone hasn't been through it, it's hard for them to relate. So if you've got SIBO yourself and you've got a family member or a friend that just says, "Oh, just have a little bit, it'll be fine," it's probably they come from a place where they haven't had those issues before, so they can't relate. So I was showing a friend of mine who's also a naturopath. I lifted up my top and I was like, "Oh, look what's happened to my stomach." And she's like, "You're just pushing it out." I was like, "I'm not. This is what happens." And it was healthy food that we were eating, like pumpkins and sweet potatoes and sweet corn. So all healthy foods because we're both naturopaths. But they were just the wrong foods for me because I had SIBO. So you get the bloating 1 to 3 hours after eating because that's when it's still in the small intestine. So if you're getting the bloating after that, it's probably gone into the large intestine. And then you can get diarrhea, constipation, or you can also have alternating. So it can change. The bacteria can do different things from there. You can end up with food intolerances because if things are sore and irritated in your digestive system, then you can get irritated by it. The difference between an intolerance and an allergy. So if you've got an allergy to something, it involves like an IgE immune response. And that tends to be things like nuts and shellfish. So if you've got that allergy, you're probably going to have it for the rest of your life unless you're really good at things like quantum healing and meditation. But most of the time it's going to be there. Whereas an intolerance is dose dependent. So you might be able to have 1 egg, but you can't have 3. You might be able to have 1 piece of bread, but you can't have 1 every day. Kind of goes from there. What else we got? Gas. So there'll always be like a gas. So there's bacteria in the body, and they eat the fibers in the carbohydrates. So carbohydrates you find in all your plant foods. It's not just like your bread and your pasta. It's in your vegetables and your fruits as well. So these bacteria, they like to eat the fiber. And then when they eat the fiber, in the cases of SIBO, they either release hydrogen gas or methane gas. And then did you know, if you can't digest your carbohydrates so well, there's just like 30 grams of undigested carbohydrates, which would be like the equivalent of an apple. That has the ability to produce up to 10 liters of gas. That's a lot. So this is like my water bottle. This is about 1 liter. Can you imagine 10 of those in your intestine? That's how uncomfortable it can get. Pretty sore. Belching or burping. So if you find like you've eaten some food and then within like 30 minutes or an hour, you just need to get that gas out. Abdominal pain or discomfort. So we have lots of nerve endings in the digestive system. It's called the enteric nervous system, and enteric relates to the intestines. And there's actually more nerve endings in your enteric nervous system than there are in the spinal cord. So if these nerve endings are getting overstimulated, they can become very sensitive and hypersensitive. Just like if anyone's got siblings, and then they start teasing so then you crack, like your nerves just get overstimulated. So you can have a weight gain or weight loss. I actually probably see about a 50-50 ratio with my clients. So those of us that struggle with our weight think it must be such a lovely problem to have. It's not. So if you know someone that's underweight with SIBO, don't give them a hard time and say they're so lucky because they hate it just as much as we don't like being overweight. Okay, testing. So I am a huge fan of testing for SIBO. I often get the question, can you not just go by symptoms? We're all adults, so you can do whatever you like, but I don't recommend it because it doesn't always match up. As an example, I used to suffer from constipation. And so usually that means that the methane archaea are dominant in the small intestine. So you get the methanogens, which release methane gas, and then you get the other ones which release the hydrogen gas. So usually the methane gas slows the transit time and causes constipation. Usually the hydrogen causes diarrhea. But my methane was actually fine. My hydrogen numbers actually didn't even fit on the chart. So if I had just gone by my symptoms, I wouldn't have done the right treatment protocol. So I highly recommend doing testing. These are some of the labs that I like. So I prefer the lactulose breath test, which is different from lactose. And then this is what we call the substrate. So it's like a little packet of sugar. Oh, should I got the kit? Sorry, I should have done it before. I've got one here. So it's super good. So this is SIBO test. So you'll get like a little kit, and it's just a little bit of sugar. It's like a little lactulose solution. And then I like the lactulose because it takes longer to get through the small intestine. Glucose is another substrate, but that gets absorbed higher up in the small intestine. So if your SIBO is towards the end of the small intestine, you might not pick it up. You can always do both, that's great too. So these are some different SIBO labs. So absolutely anybody can order a kit themselves. So if you're in a country where your doctor hasn't really heard about SIBO or your doctor's not really on board with SIBO, just do it yourself. It's not super cheap, but it's so worth it because you get so much information. So this is SIBO test in Australia, and you get like a little box from them. They ship them out worldwide. So they ship them to me here in Bali. I think the most random place that they shipped them to was Moldova, which is somewhere in Europe. And that's their website, so you can order it off there. It's 225 Aussie dollars domestic or 245 international. And they just send it out in the mail, and you get the little kit. You get instructions on how to do the prep diet. You get a referral form. And what you do is you'll need to do a prep diet for 1 to 2 days beforehand. So the purpose of the prep diet is to reduce the fermentation in your small intestine so that when you do the test and when you drink the lactulose, if the bacteria are in your small intestine, they'll wake up and react to the lactulose. And so then you fast overnight, and then you breathe into test tubes. So you breathe, it's a 3-hour test, and you do a sample every 20 minutes. It's so easy and it's so worth it. So that's that. Cool. So it's in Australia, they're sent worldwide. And then in Germany, there's one called SIBO Lab. They don't actually have a website, so I just email them all the time. That's their number and that's their email address, and this is 129 euros, which is about the same as the 240 Aussie dollars. Okay, so then we also have SIBO Canada, because it's only sugar. I don't understand this. So in the United States and in the United Kingdom, lactulose has to be prescribed by a doctor. It's only sugar. It's whatever. So to get a SIBO test kit in the States, it would need to be prescribed, or you can order it from SIBO Canada and they just ship it to you. It takes about a week. That's super easy. And those are their details there. Okay, I think I need a little bit of water. So these are some treatment options for SIBO. And just remember, so there's like multiple ways to get to 10. So like 2 + 8, 3 + 7, 4 + 6. I'm giving you one option here that I find works really well for my clients. There are other options that work too. One bit of advice though, there's so much information in those Facebook groups. I don't recommend going in there because a lot of the people in there aren't working with professionals, so they don't have the specific treatment right for them. I think you should do this, you should do that. But if you don't know your case history, that can be really harmful. So I do think it's a good idea to work with a practitioner, even if just to start you off. And then don't try and do everyone's protocol. Find one protocol and do that one. Okay, so then we have the herbal antimicrobials. I'll come to the specifics a little bit later. Then we also have the elemental diet. We have antibiotics. Then we have SIBO Slim. So these are the herbal antimicrobials. So if you are methane dominant, so if you've got the methanogens releasing the methane gas, then the product Alimax is very specific. So Alimax is made up of garlic, but if you know SIBO, you'll know that you shouldn't really have onions and garlic because the fructan content is really high, and that can be like the #1 cause of these IBS symptoms. But the Alimax has been extracted so that it doesn't have the fructans. So it's got all the antimicrobial activity without being aggravating to the digestive system. Then if you have hydrogen-dominant SIBO, you want the berberine-containing herbs. You can even get berberine products as they are, like, I don't like to say brand names because I don't work for any company. I don't want to promote any company. I'm also not going to give dosages because it's different for everyone. So you need to know a case history before I go prescribing anything. But you get berberine-containing herbs, like such as golden seal or philodendron, and then you get the berberine as itself. Other ones include wormwood, cloves, oregano, thyme, and pordaco. I often find if someone has SIBO, it's not just SIBO that they have. Like there's often some level of what we call dysbiosis, which is an imbalance between the good and the bad bacteria. And then because I live in Bali and a lot of my clients have been traveling, like I have been traveling to like a foreign country or they had food poisoning, then I often throw in some anti-parasite herbs just in case, because you're in there anyway, you might as well sort it out at the same time. So those wormwood and cloves and oregano, they are anti-parasite too. Always worth it. So the elemental diet is just liquid calories for 2 to 3 weeks. So it is really effective. Like studies have shown that it can be up to 84% effective at getting rid of SIBO. I think it goes up to like 75% at week 2 and then up to 84% at week 3. There's ready-made ones, but I'm a fan more of the homemade formula because if you look at the ready-made ones, they often have things like dextrose and they've got some funny ingredients in there that aren't suitable for SIBO, which I just can't understand. So there is a homemade formula by Dr. Alison C. Becker. She is amazing with SIBO. She's one of the top researchers. These slides I will email out to everyone afterwards, and that's a clickable little bit there. So you can just click that and it'll take you to the homemade formula and you can do that yourself. I don't use it too often with my clients because coming out of it's very tricky. So especially if there's a history of eating disorders or disordered, I prefer saying disordered eating. So I find there's that when you start to eat again, it's just like, wah, and that can hurt the digestive system. So I like the herbal antimicrobial route because it's gentler. It might take a little bit longer, but you learn how to eat as well. So the elemental diet is easy because you don't need to think about it. But then when you come out of it, you don't really know which way to go first. I don't prescribe antibiotics because I am an Australian trained naturopath and we don't do that. But these are the ones that some people use. As far as antibiotics go, these aren't the worst of the worst, but antibiotics are nasty. If you think about your garden, so if there's weeds in your garden, the quickest way to get rid of those weeds is to set the whole thing on fire. But then at the end of the fire, you don't have anything left. Whereas if you took maybe even the same amount of time, but were just a little bit more methodical about it and actually just pulled out the weeds, by the time you left pulling out the weeds, your beautiful garden is going to be ready to go. That's how I like to think about it. And the relapse rate is pretty high because it wipes out the microbiome. So the microbiome is we've got 7 different microbiomes, but the gut microbiome is like the large intestine. And the better that this is working, it starts to self-regulate. Then you don't need supplements, you don't need herbs, you don't need all this stuff. It just kind of works by itself. Just like the Amazon rainforest versus the desert. Which one would you rather have? Okay, SIBO Slim, that comes up a little bit later. So food treatment for SIBO. So what is the purpose of it and how long to do it for? So you can't fix SIBO just through food alone. You can manage your symptoms, but you need to actually get in there and fix it. If you think about mosquitoes and stagnant water, so the mosquitoes are drawn to stagnant water. It's not that they made the water stagnant. And then it's not just enough to blast away the mosquitoes. You need to get that water flushing through again. So same with SIBO, you need to identify why you got SIBO in the first place and fix that. The food will just help to reduce the symptoms and it also helps to reduce inflammation. So if you're eating foods that are high FODMAP, so FODMAP stands for fermentable oligosaccharides, disaccharides and polyols. This just stands for like the different types of sugars. So, and it can be healthy foods as well. They can be like lentils and chickpeas and these sorts of things. But because they're high in fermentable carbohydrates, they can keep feeding the SIBO because this is their favorite food. So when you kind of reduce the fermentable carbohydrates in your diet, it can help to reduce the numbers of the SIBO. And then also the foods. So I talk about I love the biphasic diet by Dr. Narala Jacobi. And they're also very, very clean foods. So there's no gluten, there's no processed foods, there's no junk foods. And so this can help to reduce inflammation in the digestive system so that even before you start needing gut repair nutrients, it's already going to start healing leaky gut. So often people that have SIBO have some degree of leaky gut, which is so our digestive system is like that, and these kind of lock in together like teeth. And we want them to be quite nice and tight. They're called the tight junctions. Things can pass through and get absorbed, like your vitamins and your minerals and your amino acids, which are the building blocks of protein. If leaky gut's there when there's been inflammation for too long or too much gluten, then the teeth kind of open up and things can get into the bloodstream, like whole proteins instead of the amino acids. And so then when that happens, that makes the immune system crazy because the body's just trying to attack all this stuff all the time. That can lead to the inflammation. And then there's a saying like leaky gut and leaky brain, it's the same sort of barrier. So if there's leaky gut in the digestive system, there can be a thing called leaky brain. If the brain gets inflamed, then we can feel depressed, especially if there's too many of the not so good bacteria, because these guys contain something called lipopolysaccharides, which is considered an endotoxin. So endotoxin is within a toxin. And this is like in their outer shell. So when they've been fed by the wrong different foods, unwittingly sometimes, like they can be good foods too. But if they drop these lipopolysaccharides into your digestive system and you have leaky gut, then they can get into the bloodstream and they can make you feel depressed. This is actually how they test pharmaceutical antidepressants. They inject the mice with lipopolysaccharides and then give them the pharmaceutical antidepressant and see if it works. So how long to do it for? I usually do there's 2 different phases. So I usually do phase 1 for 6 weeks and then phase 2 for another 6 weeks. So that's 12 weeks altogether. I wouldn't do it more than 6 months at a time. I get really sad if someone writes to me and said, I've been on the FODMAP diet for 2 years, I feel great. On the inside, I know what's happening to the microbiome. So we need the different kinds of fibers for our microbiome and the bacteria in there, otherwise they starve as well. And I talk about the microbiome so much because they help with so many things. Like they help with our immune system. They produce like 85% of our serotonin. It's a really important part of the body and weight management. And this is a really good resource. So Rebecca Coombs of the Healthy Gut, she's got the world's first cookbooks and she's got lots of recipes on her site. She's got a YouTube channel. She's very giving with the information, so you can find her there. So then what? So once you've done like the clearing out of the SIBO, say with the biphasic diet and the antimicrobials, you need to do the next stage, which is the gut and microbiome restoration. A lot of people just clear their SIBO and think that's the end of the story. But if you don't do this part, then the relapse rate's really high. So back to my analogy with the desert and the rainforest. If you were to take a fern, say this fern is your probiotic, your good bacteria, and if you put that fern in the desert, the first time there's too much sun or too much wind or too much rain, it'll probably just die. If you take that same fern and put it in the Amazon rainforest, because the soil's so rich and healthy and fertile, it'll be able to withstand a whole bunch more. So you definitely want to have the Amazon rainforest in your gut. And we can do this with motility agents. So motility is things passing through, so how things move through your digestive tract. We want to repair the leaky gut that I was talking about. We want to restore your microvilli. These guys are really important. So in the small intestine, if you were to flatten it all out, the surface area is equivalent to the size of a tennis court. And this is because of these little villi. So this is your tube, and then on the lining, you've got these little villi. And then on the villi, you've got microvilli. And if you imagine like seaweed, and the fish swim through the seaweed and it cleans off the fish. So the same thing with our food, it passes through the small intestine, and then these villi and the microvilli, they have brush border enzymes. So they help to break down, digest, and absorb your food. If you don't have any villi, then the food will just pass over. And again, you end up malnourished even though you're eating all the right things. You want to replenish the lost nutrients. I'll come to the specifics in the next couple slides. And rebuild the microbiome. So motility agents, they're also called prokinetics. So kinetic means movement, so pro-movement. And we can do this with digestive bitters, ginger, and something called Motil Pro. That's one brand name I will give you. And then to repair the leaky gut, there's different ones for different people, so it's very specific. So some people absolutely cannot tolerate glutamine. It gives them headaches and rashes and hives. Some people, it's amazing. So definitely work with a practitioner. And then there's the licorice, marshmallow. These are things called demulcents. So it's like a nice soothing layer for your mucous membranes because they often get damaged. If you think about how come I used to be able to eat everything and now I can't. So at the moment, my hand is totally fine. I can touch this, I can touch that, I can touch my phone, I can touch the water bottle. If I was to burn my hand on the stove, my instinct would be to take it away quite quickly. So I've taken away the cause of the problem, but I need to look after that sore and I need to heal it and soothe it and fix it up again. Because if it's sore, even though just yesterday I could touch this, I could touch that, because it's so sore and open and inflamed, everything's going to hurt. So it's not just enough to take away what caused the problem. You need to heal the damage that the problem caused. So these can be really good. And I'm a fan of broths as well, if you're not vegetarian or vegan. If your gut is very leaky, like if you're really, really inflamed, I would start with meat broth. And then, so you want to avoid the trigger foods. So say for a celiac, someone that's allergic to gluten, if they were to eat gluten, their villi just die super quick. So you need to find out what your triggers are. And doesn't mean that you can't have them forever. Just heal up a little bit more and then reintroduce them bit by bit. So these are commonly the nutrients that get lost with SIBO because the bacteria love to eat iron and B12. So it can be a little bit tricky. Like if you see that your test results show that you're really low in iron, and then you supplement with iron, you can actually feed the SIBO. So it's good to clear that SIBO out first, or get iron infusions or B12 injections, because then you bypass the digestive system. And then B complex is always really good, and multi. And then I didn't put it there, but I also actually check your vitamin D, because that's very important for healing the gut lining too. Prebiotics. So prebiotics are actually more important than probiotics when it comes to restoring the microbiome. Back to my example, like if I put that fern in a soil that doesn't have any nutrients in it, it can die quite quickly. If you spend time first making the soil nice and rich and healthy, when you put the probiotics in there, they've got more of a chance to kind of take hold. It's actually a myth that probiotics repopulate the gut. They don't. They are transient, which means that they stay in the body for about 3 to 4 days. But if you've got nice, healthy soil from the prebiotics, which can include things like partially hydrolyzed guar gum, acacia gum, fructooligosaccharides, or FOS, or MOS, or GOS. These are all different kinds of prebiotics. And you can find them through food as well if you just have a little Google search. So, okay, now we're getting to the really fun part. This is me, and you can see my little dress as well. So, what does SIBO Slim do? It gets rid of fat. It's amazing. So the protocol that I've done is that I've taken a combination of the weight loss protocol that I did a couple of years ago, and then the protocol that I've been having success with my clients for SIBO. So it uses the combination of the biphasic diet, but I've adapted a little bit to make it weight loss friendly. And then I use the herbal antimicrobials. And then for the weight loss part, it's these specific drops that you take. And these specific drops help the body to target only the abnormal stored fat. It's amazing. So in the body, you get, nowadays I talk about 2 different kinds of fat, but if you think about it, there's actually 3. So you get your energy in, energy out fat, which is like the fat that we eat, the fat that we use. And then we get the structural fat, and then we get the abnormal stored fat. So if you just diet without doing the right way, then you'll go through your energy in, energy out. Then you'll go through your structural fat. Then if you're still going, you'll get to your abnormal stored fat. But the thing is, we need those first two. So then if you've done that, and then as soon as you start eating again, you're just going to put on the weight because your body needs to replenish those stores. So that's why a lot of people get that rebound weight. So when you take these drops, it's so cool. So the guy that originally developed it was in the 1950s. And so he was in Africa and he observed these like really, really underweight pregnant mothers. But when they were giving birth, their babies were a perfectly healthy weight. He's like, what's going on here? Why are they doing that? And then he hypothesized that it was because of HCG, which is the pregnancy hormone. Because 24/7, the body is giving nutrients through the placenta to the baby to keep it alive. So that's the priority. So in the cases like in starving Africa, there wasn't so much food around, so it's like a bit of a famine. So in the cases of a famine, the body will preserve as much as it can, like the essential stuff, and then the abnormal stored fat isn't essential. It's kind of like a high interest savings account. Like it's there, it's yours, but it's really hard to get to unless you do something like this. So when you follow like the very specific foods and then the drops as well, it just targets your abnormal stored fat. So cool. And if you don't need to lose that much, like it won't work if there's no abnormal stored fat. So if someone is already quite low weight, and then as soon as the abnormal stored fat is gone, it'll stop working. So you can't get underweight with it. So good. It creates a new lower set point for your weight. So when I talk about the set point, it's kind of that weight that we always tend to sit at. Like we might go up and down a couple of kilos, but we almost always there. So the drops also help to work on the hypothalamus. So the hypothalamus is a part of your brain that controls your metabolism, which is like how we digest. So you do this specific protocol for a minimum of 21 days, maximum of 40. It goes really, really well if we do it for the 6 weeks with the SIBO part of it. And then that works on the hypothalamus and it boosts your metabolism. And then it creates the new set point. Because after you've done the weight loss part, then you do a weight stabilization part, where you have to maintain the same weight for 21 consecutive days. And then that locks it in so that you don't get that rebound weight gain. Can you tell I'm excited about it? It's so cool. A clear SIBO. So the foods that I've put in the protocol are to do with the biphasic diet. And then also I incorporate the herbal antimicrobials and the antibacterials specific for the different kinds of SIBO. So 2 birds at the same time. It heals the gut. So as I was talking about, the foods are very low inflammation, so that's going to help to heal up the leaky gut. The first stage of the protocol is like kind of like the killing phase. So you're clearing the SIBO out of the small intestine, there's bacterial overgrowth out of the small intestine. And then the next 6 weeks is restoring the digestive system, it's restoring the gut lining, it's rebuilding the microvilli, and it is rebuilding your microbiome. It resolves food intolerances because just like with my example with the hand, it's given it a chance to heal. And then the foods are very specific for the first 6 weeks. So everyone's doing the same thing and it's very neutral, they're very anti-inflammatory. It can do so much to heal. And then in the second stage, I've got a very methodical way of reintroducing the food so that you know which foods your body likes and at which amount. The digestive system heals quite quickly if you think about how long someone might have had something. So someone could have had digestive issues for 20 years, but they can feel 80% better in 3 months. Whereas say someone with Alzheimer's, it's going to take a lot longer if you can actually get there. Yeah, so and then if there are still food intolerances, just remember that intolerance is dose dependent. It's just a bit aggravating. It's different to an allergy. So it doesn't mean that you'll never have these foods again. It just maybe put them aside till later. So I'm at the stage now where I can pretty much eat anything, but I choose not to because I like to feel switched on. I like to have lots of energy. I like to go surfing. And I recently did the celiac gluten challenge because I wanted just, for 100%. And to do this, you need to eat the equivalent of 4 slices of bread every day for 6 weeks. And then you do a blood test to see if you've got any antibodies. So doing that, my digestive system was fine, but I was so foggy in my brain and everything was slow. I was pissed off at things and my body was just a little bit achy. So just because you can have something in terms of your digestion, sometimes I'd rather not. And then it expands your food choices. So for our microbiome, we need the diversity in our foods. So I always do, I aim for at least 40 different plant foods per week, which we can do with this protocol. And then if you have the 40 different plant foods, because all the different kinds of bacteria in your gut like certain different types of fiber. And before I knew this, I thought I was doing really, really well because I had vegetables, breakfast, lunch, dinner, not always breakfast, but I tended to have the same 10. So I'd always get cauliflower, I get broccoli, I get carrots, I get eggplant, zucchini, but it wasn't enough. So now I get a much bigger variety, and it doesn't mean, so say the quantity, say your plate is this big, it's much, much, much better to have like 12 different plant foods on that plate in smaller quantities than 3 different kinds of vegetables in larger quantities. That's going to help with your digestive system. And the more that you do this, like the slow and steady approach, your digestive system gets used to more and more foods. Then you can tolerate more and more and more foods. Then you can go out to restaurants again without freaking out. Then you can go to family dinners without freaking out because your body can handle it. Oh, I can't see what that says. Oh, it makes you feel awesome. It does. It's so good. Because it's not just the weight that you lose, it's the life that you gain. So this is how I felt when I was overweight. So this was about a year and a half ago. So I'm still smiling because I'm always smiling. I tend to hide behind my smile. This is a real smile though. So while I was going through that, I felt so depressed and I felt like I was a prisoner in my own body and I just couldn't get it. It was just so annoying. And then I would compare myself to everybody else. I felt like a prisoner in my own body. I pretty much wanted to be anybody else but me. Even if someone was the biggest size than me, they just looked happier in their body than I did, and I was absolutely miserable. I was still confident. I did a lot of emotional work with a coach of mine. So my self-love has increased so much. And at that time I had a lot of self-hatred that I had to work through. But now it's just easier. So like nurturing a body through self-love is so much nicer. So at that time I was still confident in like my friendships. I was still confident in I was a nice person. I was still confident in my work. But as a person, I was really, really hard on myself. And I'd look in the mirror and I would, you know, when you look in, if you've been sick yourself, like I would look in the mirror and I'd look in my eyes. I was like, I don't know where's me? That's not me. And I didn't really like it. And how I feel now. So this feels like my natural disposition. So I'm back to waking up early. I'm back to waking up feeling positive. There was a time where my digestive system was quite inflamed and I used to dread going to sleep at night because I knew that I had to wake up the next morning and deal with my life. I was like, I don't want to do it again. And sometimes I even cry in the mornings. I'm proud of my body. I'm excited to start dating again. Because like, it's really important to find your why. So my why is that I would love a family of my own. So I want a bunch of little mini Kirstens. So to do that, actually, you could get sperm donors, but I want the family unit. So I actually got a date if I want to do that. But I've just been kept holding back because I didn't feel... I think to find the one, you need to be the one. So I needed to work on myself first, and I feel good about that. And enjoy connecting with others, whereas before I would hide myself away, curl up. I'm actually enjoying the attention from guys. It's pretty cool. So how does SIBO Slim work? As I've been saying, like there's 2 stages. There's the losing weight stage and the clearing SIBO stage. So that's the first 6 weeks. And the average weight loss over these 6 weeks is 10 to 15 kilos. So it's super cool. If you don't need to lose that much, the average over 3 weeks is 7 kilos. And if you don't need to lose that much, as I said before, it just stops working when you run out of fat to burn. So then we transition you over. Stage 2 is weeks 7 to 12. So this is the weight stabilization phase and the gut and microbiome restoration stage. This is when you create the new set point for your weight, and it's also when we introduce the new foods. It's really fun. It's a whole new world. That was like the first time so when I did the first time, it was the first time in my life that I ate without feeling bloated. And it wasn't until that happened that I realized what had been happening. I just thought it was normal for your tummy to puff out every time you eat. It's not. So now my stomach looks the same before and after eating. So these are the results that I got. So my weight went from 78.8 down to 67.8. Waist was 79, it's now 68. Hips were 105 down to 96. and inches are there and pounds there for you stateside people. And my size 65 to 60. These I'll leave through when you guys receive the slides, but it's just some people having done it before, the weight loss side of it. So the logistics of how, so this is a group coaching program, and it's going to kick off on Monday, the 7th of January, which is the first Monday of the new year. So the group is going to be capped at 20, so I can still have a good grasp of what everybody's doing. It is a group coaching program. It's not private coaching. So I would love everybody to have their test done. And then how it's going to work, because SIBO cases are different for everyone. So there's going to be 4 different protocols to choose from, for like the skeleton sort of protocol. So there'll be hydrogen-dominant SIBO with diarrhea. There'll be hydrogen-dominant SIBO with constipation. Methane-dominant SIBO with constipation, methane-dominant SIBO with diarrhea. So that'll be the basics of it. And then I'll also have things in there. So everyone's going to do an intake form for me before they start. So I'll see everyone's case history and health history. And so I'll know which things to look out for. And then from there, in the beginning, I'll also give suggestions about, so say you have got muscle cramps and you crave chocolate all the time and your period's an awful time, I might suggest some magnesium as well. If you are waking up at 3 a.m. and you just want to punch everyone in the face, then I might recommend some adrenal tonics. It goes from there. The group coaching will be 1 hour every week, apart from the last week of the month, where I give you guys a break to integrate. And it will be on Thursday mornings at this time. So for you in the state, it will be Wednesday evening. All sessions will be online via Zoom, and they're recorded, and then I upload them into our private Facebook group, so just for that group. And then I'll be in the group almost every day, replying to any questions that you have, so that you have the best chance of success. I think that's the logistics. Anything else we can ask in the chat? Yeah. So the topics that we'll cover, because I want you to learn how to look after your body, so that at the end of these 3 months, you don't need me, so that you will have learned so much about how to look after and heal your own body that you can just do it yourself if you want to. Otherwise, I'm still there. So we'll go through nutrition, so the different kinds of foods and how to work out what is good for you, not for Susie or Jane or Paul or Peter. Mindset, because this is super, super, super important. And I just finished working with still in the middle, but someone's just done a round of clearing SIBO, and he's got such an amazing mindset that he has had about 95% resolution of symptoms in 4 weeks. It was just like boom, 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 boom. And I was like, wow, that's cool. We get to about movement and play, and then stress management, because stress is so underrated. So when we are stressed, and it can be physical stress, mental stress, emotional stress, good stress, bad stress, whatever it is, we are in our sympathetic nervous system, which is our fight and flight. And then when we're in our fight and flight, like so say someone's chasing you with a knife, or say you see a car pile up, everything that happens in your body, if you think about the adrenaline and the cortisol, that's all like pumping. So when that's on, your parasympathetic nervous system gets shut down, which is your rest and your digest. Still works, but one's always going to be predominant if you think about the yin and the yang. So we need to kind of bring that back into balance. And then underlying causes, because you need to figure out why you got SIBO in the first place. So then it comes down to how much. So I want you to think about the cost versus the value. So if you think about what this would give you. So for me, it's having the confidence to go dating again. So it's my wife's family. I would love my family. I can't wait. It could be going out to eat at restaurants without freaking out. It could be going on a date and not needing to know where the nearest toilet is. It could be actually going on a holiday because you know that you can handle the food while you're away. That's the cost versus value. So I say that working with me is an investment in your life. So think about it that way. The SIBO Slim Group Coaching Program kicks off on Monday, the 7th of January, 2019. Oh, Thursday. It's going to be Thursday. Need to fix that. It's a one-off payment of $870 for the full 3 months. I have been asked if I do a payment plan. I decided that I would, and so that would be 3 monthly installments of $350 per month for 3 months. This doesn't include supplements, but I've never really been one that wants to make money on supplements. So as part of the program, you'll get everything cost price. So as an example, like in the States, that's probably, it's quite high in the States. There's like a 40% markup in the States. In the UK and Europe, it's about a 20% markup. And then in Australia, it's about 20-25% markup. So you will save that money on the supplements and it comes off like the group coaching. And it's live. Oh, it's not live now. Is it live now? Yes, it is live now. I meant to check that before I started. So this will be a clickable link as well, but you can go to it now if you like. So it's www.kirstensveld.com/product/SIBO. You're welcome to take a screenshot of this now if you want to remember it. So the group will be capped at 20. Okay, so I'm going to open up the chat. If we're using Q&A, yeah, let's do that. Check. More panelists. Okay, so does anyone have any questions that they would like to ask me? What other common ones from Q&A? So I usually get asked how much weight will I lose, but I just kind of said that one. So the average is 7 kilos over the 3 weeks, 10 to 15 over the 6 weeks. So if you need extra help, individual sessions can be booked, but everyone in the group will follow a same time schedule so that everyone's, and it gets so supportive. So the reason I want to do these group coaching programs, because when I'm working one-on-one with a client, I'm definitely very supportive. But when you do it in a group, they say that studies show that a success rate goes up to 76% when you do it with a buddy. And then in the SIBO group coaching program we've got going on at the moment, everyone is being very supportive of each other, and it's absolutely beautiful. And then what if I don't know if I have SIBO? I highly recommend testing for SIBO. So there's slides at the beginning of the webinar. You can use those. And it would be really, really, really good if you have those results by the time that we start. So the first week will be like an introduction. We'll be going through the protocol. We'll be changing some foods. And then they'll be ordering everyone's products so that everyone is ready to go to start the weight loss part from the second week. Super. I think that's all. That's not all. I would like to. So I don't. Not everybody saw. When I just recently hit 10K on my Instagram, and I had WP forms, and I had a 10K giveaway. So someone is going to win a spot on this program. So I was going to find that name. I don't know if I can do it from here. Sharing is paused. No one did there. You're so very welcome, Rosanna. Log in. Did you have any questions? Hang on, there's more pictures. 1 second. Where do my fun pictures go? You are so welcome, Jen. It was my absolute pleasure. I had some cool pictures of my shorts, but you can find them on my Instagram instead. Totally fine. Oh, there we go. Wonderful. Okay. I am going to post the winner after, and then we'll go from there. So any questions, just let me know. These are all my contact details. I'm most active on Instagram, so I tend to post something on there every day, and it tends to be like just little mini blog posts, and it's almost always about SIBO and how to help it and get relief, and I post some fun stuff on there as well. And then I send out a newsletter every Monday, and I think I'm pretty funny, and so it's just some fun stuff. So you can sign up through there through my website, and that's all pretty cool. Oh, you're welcome, Julie. No problem. Great. Thanks, guys. That is all for today. And thank you so much for joining me, for sharing with my little darling, my little baby project. And I'll see you very soon. Lots of love. I'll see you later. Zoom. Bye.